This is Sporting Life.
Well, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing podcast. David Orr, joined by Ben Linfoot, Graham Cunningham and Jack Keene from The Sun to preview the SkyBet Ebor Festival at York. 4 wonderful days to look ahead to. And, well, let's start right at the very top GC. It's the Juddmonte International on Wednesday. The next appearance of City of Troy, now odds against, and he's in deep here, isn't it? It's a cracking renewal.
It is a good race. Morning all. Hope everyone's doing well. Good to see Jack there. You snuck him in behind my back last time. He did well, a bit too well for my liking, but nice to see you, Jack. Yeah, I'm not sure it's this race of the season thing. It probably tells you what sort of season we've had in a way. As G-Rod, I think we're obliged to call him, Graham Rodway. He pointed out, and he's dead right, it's a good point, City of Troy has more Group 1s on his dance card than the rest of the field put together. So to say that it's an absolutely race ran with superstars is dead wrong. But we've grown so used to big races with smallish fields that this is a breath of fresh air. And straight off the fence, I think City of Troy will show what he's made of. I know he's a tight price, eased a little bit, but I think this is the day for him, provided they don't get too much rain overnight. And that's a theme we're going to talk about, I'm sure, right through this show. I think he has the perfect conditions to show that he's a genuine Group 1 horse, and I think he'll win.
Jack, you were at Sandown for the Eclipse. It's bizarre when a Derby winner follows up in the Eclipse and people feel a little underwhelmed. John Magnier came up with the famous quote, "It's down to the horse now. His clothes are off. He's in bed. It's up to him." Do you think we're going to see what they clearly see on the Ballydoyle Gallop on the racecourse at York?
Yeah, I am in the GC camp, to be honest. Everything is set up in this race for a monster performance. The performance we've been promised for so long. Obviously, it was a great training performance from Aidan to kind of get him back from that shambolic run in the Guineas to come back and win the Derby. But I think we were all expecting a bit more at Sandown. I know the ground, there were some excuses made about the ground, but he was workmanlike. It was hard work. I thought 2 down he was going to get beat. So he did well to kind of dig deep and win in the end. But as you say, no excuses on the ground front on Wednesday. Big, long, straight, should be a good pace on here. So it's kind of all set up for a massive performance. But I mean, looking at the size of the field, that to me says that obviously there's a lot of money on offer, but I think people aren't scared of City of Troy, hence why so many are willing to take him on. So there is that little bit of vulnerability there. Maybe we saw it in the Eclipse, and obviously he's been beaten before in the Guineas. So fair play. A lot of people are wanting to have a crack, but I'm definitely in the GC camp. I think this could be the day we see the performance we've been promised for so long. Sandown form does look a bit better now than it did at the time, doesn't it? Of course it does, yeah.
Alrefa bolted up in Germany and See the Fire, well beaten at Sandown, pretty well beaten, went close in the Nassau.
Exactly, yeah.
But if we're looking at negatives, that hanging right, which was noticeable at Sandown in the finish of the Eclipse, and in the Derby to some extent as well, against the Camber, down the straight. How big a move is that for you, going left-handed at York?
Well, I think at Sandown you might put that down to the softer ground. That could have been a reason why he was hanging that day. If the ground was unsuitable, it might provoke that. So I think the faster ground, which I think we are going to get despite weather forecasts, is definitely in his favour. And so the hanging run wouldn't really be on my mind. And I think it's 3 out of 3, Dave. I'm with him as well. I can't find too many negatives. You just look at him and he looks the best in this field, doesn't he? And it's a bit of a D-Day for him. It could be a career-defining performance.
Yes, agreed.
And I think we're all hoping for that, and I think we might get it.
I think the one thing that struck me is how quick we had to criticise. He was written off as that. Well, not written off, but he was labelled next August Rodin. Joe from the Guineas to the Derbies are very different. He got down and dirty to win at Sandown, didn't he? Something that we know August has aimed in his own words won't do now. It's far. I think we could see fireworks at York. I think that long straight, the setup of this race, and hopefully the ground, I think we'll be running out of excuses if we don't see it on Wednesday. So fingers crossed. Let's talk about the rivals, though. There's some interesting ones in there. Jack Calandagan, you were at Ascot when he won that King Edward VII. I mean, he's a gelding, so he won't be going to the Ark. But sporting bid to come here over 10 furlongs. How high can he fly? He's 129p weight adjusted time form. That's 4 off City of Troy.
Oh, he was incredibly impressive, wasn't he? At Ascot, arguably the most impressive winner of the whole week. Dropping back to this extended 10 again, I think he'll run well, but the way he kind of put his race to bed inside the final couple of furlongs that day, I'm a bit worried about the drop back in terms of kind of. I think there's some runners in here with a slightly better turn of foot, but perhaps the ground's going to be pretty lively. I think he's a very smart horse. I'm not sure about the depth of that King Edward. It looked a really good race going there, but I mean, subsequent, runners haven't really shown the form off in a great light. So, look, he was very impressive that day. I think he's a good horse, but I'm sceptical he's going to be really, good enough to beat City of Troy if City of Troy brings his A game to the table, to be honest.
Ambient Friendly, Scoop, second in the Derby, didn't seem to get home at the cover over the 1.5 miles. 10 furlongs, has he got the ammunition to get close to the favourite again?
I don't think he'll be far away, but I think City of Troy put him in his place at Epsom, and I would expect the same result again. I find it difficult to see him reversing that form, for all that it's a different trip, and we know Ambient Friendly's a strong traveller. We don't really know what he's got when he's really in a battle, because he won at Lingfield pretty easily. We saw at the Curragh that he was perhaps outstayed, so it'd be interesting to see him travel well and then get into a battle. But I just think he's not quite as good as City of Troy, and I would expect that form to be confirmed. I agree with Jack about Clandaghan. I think he's too short in the betting for me. He was ridden cold at Ascot off a strong pace and came through over 1.5 miles in what looks a pretty weak race, and I'd rather be with the other French horse than him, I think.
I think he's overpriced to the French horse on that Royal Ascot form, given that he's a Group 1 10 furlong older horse,
Yeah.
isn't he? He wants a strong pace. You don't get that often in France. GC, best of the rest for you?
Well, if Ambient Friendly wins, I lose. What price would Sunway be in this race? Couldn't beat Sunway last time. I think he might be one of those horses who travels well and doesn't find a right lot, whatever the trip, myself. Calandagana echoed Jack's point. He was a 110 horse in France, and he's now probably £10 better than that because he got 1.5 miles and the pace was on from a long way out. He got a proper stamina test at Ascot. And I think Zarakem should run well. I think he's got a very similar setup to Ascot. Good gallop, pacemaker for City of Troy. Duretza will come to in a moment. His best chance has to be right on the engine from the start as a real stayer who goes on the front end. Zarakem should run well, and he's got a couple of lengths in hand on a good horse, Alflaila, based on Prince of Wales' stakes. Admittedly, Alflaila, I think, was coming back from a lengthy break that day.
Just give us a line on Duretza. Where's he sitting here? I'm looking at the time fall numbers, and his high 120s weight adjusted. Yeah. It puts him banging the mix of those in behind to the favourite.
It does, but his numbers come from 2 performances. The Japanese Ledger, 1.7 miles, when he got the complete saloon passage on the inside, but he did it in really handsome style. And then he ran well, but he was really put in his place by Prognosis. Now, I think Prognosis is the Japanese horse you would have wanted for this race, but he was beaten 5 lengths by Prognosis. He ran a stinker last time in the 2-mile Tenno show in the spring, but apparently the heat got to him that day. Japan have finished second in this race. You'll remember Zeno Rob Roy finished second in 05 to Electrocutionist. I think Zeno Rob Roy was a more accomplished horse than Duretza. He'd won a Japan Cup and various other big races when he came to Britain. So I think he adds a lot of colour to the race, and he's got a high quality rating. And I think you'll see him right in the mix from early on. But 1.25 miles, you're asking him to produce a high rating at a trip he hasn't excelled over before.
Jack, a line on Blue Stocking. They could have gone for the Yorkshire Oaks. They're going for gold in here. She's right at the top of her game, isn't she? But she got the basic pace, you think, to win a Juddmonte International?
It would be a slight concern for me. Obviously, there was a bit of dig in the ground in Ireland last time, wasn't there, where she mowed down Emily Upjohn. I think fair play for them for having a crack. It definitely adds a different angle to this race, a really interesting angle. I mean, she would have been, 6-4, maybe a bit shorter for the Yorkshire Oaks. Mm-hmm. Later in the week, so they've kind of passed up the opportunity to be a hot favourite for a big Group 1. Obviously, she's got the Group 1 on the board already, so it's, you can have a crack now with a filly, can't you? You can just roll the big dice, as Johnny G would say. So I admire them for having a go. Whether or not she's got that kind of change of gear to go with a horse of City of Troy's calibre over a flat 10 on quick ground. It'd be a slight concern for me, but I think she'll run a good race. Definitely. She obviously won there earlier in the year pretty impressively as well.
Jack, I'll see you at Johnny G and raise you a GG. Graham Good. He used to love a sponsor's horse in a sponsor's race. He'd be all over blue stocking in the Juddmonte International, wouldn't he?
Let's give just a line. We've touched on him with Alf Flaley. We know he likes Yorks. He's going to be strong at the finish. Owen Bowe said it takes a while to engage top gear. Is he in too deep here, or are you expecting a bold show?
I think a bold show. I think if we're looking at best of the rest away from City of Troy, I think Alf Flaley would be top of my list, to be honest, just because of that York form. We know it is a track for specialists, really, despite it being such a fair track. You see horses time and time again come back and perform well or badly at York, and Alf Flaley is definitely in the camp that performed well here. He's won his last 3. He's done it at a good level, not at a level like this, but he's done it at Group 3 and 2 level. And he's done it against pace biases as well. He's done it off a slow pace. I think a more solid, strong gallop will suit him. And I think if I was looking at an each way bet against City of Troy, I'd probably come down on him. I mean, Owen Burrows is in good form. He'll like the ground. He'll like the setup. I think there's lots of ticks in his boxes. I just don't think he's quite good enough. But I do think there will be a bold show.
About this Maljoon, lads.
Better run last time, wasn't it? That was the best run we've seen in a while. But I don't know. I'm not convinced by him. I'm not convinced.
New trip for him, isn't it?
Go on. If we all like City of Troy, let's go around the grounds for the forecast horse. Starting with you, Dave Ward.
It's Zarkam, JC, the French horse. I think he's absolutely rock solid for the 3, and I'd imagine he might even get 4 places in that Juddmonte International from the greedy bookies tomorrow. So I think he's a really solid each way player. I think he's overpriced on that Prince of Wales's form.
Ben?
Yeah, I'll go with Alf Flaley for the forecast.
Yeah, I'm the same as Scoop. I think Alf Flaley is going to run a nice race.
I think I might go with Zarakem. I think it's very tight for the places, but I'm hoping that City of Troy. You did right. Several of you have made the point. This is the day for him. He's either going to show he's an ace or just another good horse, isn't he? But it is a race where the real cracks tend to show themselves and win handsomely.
Let's move on. The SkyBet Great Voltage, not a great field size. I think speaks volumes of the division at the minute and the lack of middle distance horses that we have to play with in the 3-year division. But we've got 2 Aidan O'Brien horses. Jack is running both the Irish Derby winner and Illinois. I mean, Ryan Moore obviously on Los Angeles. What do you make of the decision to run both, and how do you expect to do it? It's a difficult race. The penalty structure means it's often a race that you sometimes see the favourite beaten and then come out as the top horse on numbers afterwards, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it can be a strange race, this one, can't it? I mean, obviously, Aidan's got a good record in the race. A little surprised to see Los Angeles coming here. I kind of thought he was going to be maybe, I don't know, is the Arc the ultimate aim for him? I'm not 100% sure what the plans are for him for the autumn. But, I mean, Illinois looked a more kind of obvious candidate for this race, given I think the Ledger will be right up his street. I think Los Angeles is a classier horse. I don't necessarily think he's a top-class horse. It was a bit of a muddling Irish Derby he won. He can get a bit worked up before the start. It doesn't really seem to affect him too much in the races, but it's interesting he decided to run both. I didn't really like the form of the strength of the form of the Queen's Vase that Illinois won. I thought it was a pretty weak race, so I'd prefer Los Angeles. Obviously, Ryan's on board, so he's clearly the stable number 1. But I wouldn't be fancying either of them, to be honest, and I'd probably be looking to take both of them on.
GC, line on, Jack touched on it there on Los Angeles, that behaviour thing, fled up at Epsom beforehand and at the Swords. We're probably travelling again. It's another test of his sort of mental strength as well as his ability, really. Yeah,
I think he's an interesting character, Los Angeles. He has those potential antics before they jump. And all the way up the straight in the Irish Derby, he was doing the absolute bare minimum. He was idle as they come. So there's probably more ability in there. And he's a classic winner. But don't forget, he has a £5 penalty here. As a £5, that's not going to be, he might do it, but it's not going to be easy to concede weight to Illinois, who himself has a small penalty. King's Gambit's the one I want to come to, but you touched on the division as a whole. It's bizarre for the 250 grand great vaultiger. The might of Britain's middle distance star trainers could only muster 3 entries. Unfortunately, they're all running, but only 3 at the original 5-day entry stage for a 250 grand pot.
Staggering, isn't it, Skill? But one is King's Gambit. He's exciting. He's second favourite here. How big a player is he for you, Skill?
Yeah, I think he's a big player. He was obviously in the Al Flaler race at York last time, wasn't it? And I think he was a bit of a reluctant leader that day in a small field where there was no pace, and Callum Shepherd went forward on him. Tactics are going to be key here. There doesn't look an awful lot of pace on, but you've obviously got the Ballydoyle horses, and you think Euphoric might go forward to ensure a good gallop. So, again, in a small field race where Ballydoyle have that hand, it could all come down to tactics. King's Gambit, obviously a new trip. I do think he's a nice horse. I think he might appreciate stepping up in trip as well. But I would chuck Dear a Mile in for Owen Burrows, the Derby fourth. I think he's dependent on a strong gallop probably, but he's not got an awful lot to find with Los Angeles off better terms. So at the prices, I might come down on him. But again, it does depend on how the races run.
Jack, you against the O'Brien too. What's the one that you're taking him on with?
Yeah, well, King's Gambit, a few days ago, I was dead against him stepping up to 1.5 miles, but the more I kind of think about it, the more I'm coming round to the idea of him staying 1.5 miles pretty well. I think he's a really classy horse. He was unlucky at Ascot, we all know that, and it was a complete mess, the race at York the other day. So I think if there's one in here that could, he's obviously getting £5 from Los Angeles, which could really sway things in his favour. I think he's a potentially Group 1 class horse. He obviously needs to go and prove it, but I think the potential is there. It'll be interesting to see what he can do over 1.5 miles. I think he'll be fine, but I think Scoop's made a good point there. Dear a Mile is very interesting. I haven't seen him since the Derby. I think the only slight worry would be the ground. I think he prefers to get his toe in a bit, but I'm interested to see him back. But for me, I'd probably just lean towards King's Gambit, I think.
It's a small home defence, GC, but are they going to keep the prize in
Yes.
Lovely.
King's Gambit for me. King's Gambit getting, is it £3 from Illinois, 5 from Los Angeles. I don't think this will be a tactical dawdle. I think the pacemaker, Euphoric, will ensure a good gallop. And from what we've seen, Los Angeles and Illinois are both proper stayers. So they wouldn't want the race to develop in the way that King's Gambit's race from York last time did. But I think King's Gambit might just do them for a bit of speed getting the way here. James Doyle is aboard Space Legend in this race, Dave.
He is, and James Doyle's in the headlines as well. GC, lovely segue in. Windsor, Monday night. You'll have seen it on Twitter. Did he or didn't he with the dropping of hands? Jack, what did you make of the episode?
He must be a very smooth talker, mustn't he? To kind of worm his way out of that one. I was very surprised he got away without a ban. You don't really like to say this sort of thing, but I mean, if it was a claimer who gave that horse that same sort of ride, would they have got away with it as James Doyle did? I'm not convinced. He's obviously a veteran jockey, a top class jockey. Maybe they've just been a bit lenient towards him. I think he was a very lucky boy to get away with it, because for me, I wasn't really buying his excuse. Yeah, of course, the horse looked green and he was awkward, but it looked bad, didn't it? And I can understand why so many punters feel pretty aggrieved by that. So I think he can count himself very lucky.
GC, what did you make of it?
It looks like James has dodged a massive bullet, because this was there's no halfway house here, was there? It was either, I think, 28 days or you're free to go, young man. I'd want him on my side if I get caught for speeding as my advocate. And if you look at the Racing Post news report on this, it gives really good quotes. But the key one is, let's have a look. Blah, blah, blah. That's a great intro line. I do 100% feel for the punters, especially blah, blah, blah. He gets a wobble on and spots the winning line. I think if you just change that around to relate to the jockey and say he gets a wobble on and doesn't spot the winning line, you might be slightly close to the truth. But I'm not knocking James here. He's done his bit by going in, putting his case eloquently, and he's dodged a major bullet, because 28 days at this time of year, starting in early September, would have probably taken him out of a lot of big meetings, Ledger Week, perhaps even Art Weekend.
Yeah, lots of Wockham horses heading to the big targets as well through the autumn. So Yes, let's talk about York Scoop. The Group 3 Acomb Stakes has attracted the Guineas favourite and the Derby favourite. It's the most valuable Group 3 two-year-old race. It's a remarkable... This isn't normal either. This isn't a normal stopping point for Aidan O'Brien and Charlie Appleby. Appleby's never won the Acomb. Aidan last won it in 2000 with Hemingway, and yet they're rolling into town with Ruling Court and the Lion in Winter. What a little battle this is going to be.
Yeah, well, no, that's a good point you made, Dave. Like you say, was it Hemingway back in 2000 for Aidan? The last
Never
time.
heard of him.
He's had 15 losers in the race since then. And I think a lot of it is because they are these stoutly bred 1.5 mile horses for next year, and they can get beaten by speedier now 2-year-olds, can't they? And it could all change this season. I mean, the Lion in Winter looked an exciting prospect when he won first time out, and so did Ruling Court at Sandown. The Lion in Winter, of course, flying home to win at the Curragh, but they both won in quite similar ways in 7 furlong contests. They were ridden off the pace. They came through, and their obvious stamina was brought into play in those races. Lovely prospects, like you say, top of the betting for the classic markets next season, but just with the breeding in mind and the way they won and the prices, I might be looking for something with a bit of speed, a more typical Acomb winner to take them on with.
That's the spirit. That's what the great game needs. Hunting out value at every opportunity. Jack, it does strike me that the 2-year-old colts need a poster boy. The fillies are flying, and the numbers, the highest rated time form 2-year-olds of all fillies at the moment. The chance that one of these two might come. I don't know if you were at Sandown the day that Ruling Court went. How big an impression he made on you?
No, I wasn't, but I was watching. Obviously, I only watched that race just to see how he got on, because obviously he cost a lot of money and he was very well bred, and there was a bit of hype around him, and you couldn't have failed to be impressed by him. But a bit like Scoop, really. Both of these horses have kind of got pedigrees where you'd expect them to improve with kind of time and distance, and it's a really strange betting market. You kind of 11 to 10 Ruling Court, 2 to 1 Aidan's horse, and it's kind of 20s bar. So I would definitely be looking to take both of them on here. There's a lot of horses in here who are unexposed, more speedily bred. I think you're going to have to try and take them on. But of course, like you say, these two, if we want to see a star kind of 2-year-old going forward, it'd be great if these two drew clear and had a battle up the straight, because, you know, the game does need superstars. But I think if you're punting on this race, I think I'd want to be taking them both on. But intrigued to see what happens. But yeah, just confused by this betting market. It's very interesting race.
The one that half interests me, Jack, is this Diablo Rocco for Raphael Frere. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
I doubt it, but keep going.
Well, he's the one. You know, when you look at Acomb winners from the last 25 years, they've had one start or they've had 2 starts. You've got to come in here unexposed. I think. I don't particularly think experience is that much of a vital asset in this race. You want that precocity, you want that unexposedness. And he won at Redcar in the style of a speedy horse. He won over 6 furlongs. He drew clear by over 3 lengths. He's by Pinatubo. He's for Ammo Racing. He's won at like a big price, 25 to 1, where I might just end up making a case for him each way against the big 2. I think he's probably a little bit overpriced.
GC, probably just because we've got so accustomed to this softly avoidance approach through the wins of much of the. But to see Appleby's best 2-year-old colt at this stage and seemingly Aidan's going head to head in an Acomb, it's just, well, refreshing.
Love that. Love it. Chaldean, Phoenix of Spain, Rule of Law going way back, can be won by really good horses. I'm keener on Ruling Court than I am on the Lion in Winter. They did win their races in slightly similar style, but I thought when Ruling Court went, he really surged and showed a sustained turn of foot. He bolted up, 2nd and 3rd of Frank the Form. What must his breeze have been like to go for €2.3 million? He must have breezed really well. So I think he has Group 1 potential. I'm a little lukewarm on the Lion in Winter. The race he won at the Curragh is a rich, fertile proving ground for good horses, including Aidan O'Brien horses, including lots of good ones. I think Australia. I think even See the Stars, not on a O'Brien horse, but I think he made his debut in that race. But he wasn't the main fantasy. He took every inch of the 7 furlongs to really find full stride, and I'm convinced that he's a 1.25 mile plus horse. If he can win this, probably very good. But I'm definitely ruling Court ahead of the line and Winter for the Acomb.
Fascinating race. Let's move on to Thursday. The Yorkshire Oaks Scoop. Tight at the betting. Queen of the Pride, Content, You Got To Me, Emily Upjohn, all sort of, well, plumbing at the market. There's not much between them on timefall numbers. Which way do you sway in this?
Yeah, well, with Blue Stocking going for the Juddmonte International, I think this offers an opportunity for perhaps a less decorated filly to go and win a Group 1. The one that I like is the thriving one, Queen of the Pride for the Gosdens. Obviously, she's beautifully bred, being by Roaring Lion out the ledge with a Simple Verse, and she's really getting to grips with the game now after a couple of good wins at Haydock. I thought she was very impressive last time in the Lancashire Oaks, beating Tiffany, who's a good filly herself. And I think she's ready for this. It's her first go at a Group 1. But I think that the long straight at York's really going to suit her. I think she could even stay further, and this race could draw out her stamina. And I think she's the one on the up that can win this.
Jack, You Got To Me, Irish Oaks winner. Change of tactics, not deliberate on the day. She missed a kick and they ended up ridden with restraint. You'd imagine it will be a deliberate policy this time, that she finished her race off strongly, didn't she, under those circumstances?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think she really knuckled down well as well. I really love her attitude. She likes to, if it gets into a scrap, she's not going to shy away from it. She's a really tough filly. I know Rafe Beckett's always thought plenty of her. And as you say, benefited from kind of those change of tactics, whether or not it was, well, clearly it wasn't planned, but I really like her attitude and I think she's going to run a big race. I don't think she's quite good enough to win this. I'm kind of with Scoop. I think Queen of the Pride is just so uncomplicated in the way she's gone through her races the last twice at Haydock. I think she's a really smart filly. And we'll probably touch on Content a bit, but I mean, I didn't really come away from the Irish Oaks feeling that Content was an unlucky loser. I think You Got To Me probably would have found a bit more if Content had challenged her sooner. So I think You Got To Me probably be the main challenger to Queen of the Pride. But it's a fascinating race. Obviously, no blue stocking, so it's thrown it wide open a bit. And as Scoop says, a chance for another filly to bag their big Group 1.
There is Emily Upjohn, GC, with Kim Chumak aboard again. No chance in the Nassau from where she found herself, but it's the overall 2024 CV for Emily Upjohn. She's still some way below that peak performances of the previous seasons.
Yeah, the BHA mark has gone from peak of 121 to a current 116, and it's a 116 with a question mark. Timeform also queried the ride in the Nassau, saying it was neither here nor there, caught out wide, no cover, a fair way back. But she couldn't really make any impression anyway, and she's just become inconsistent, no question about it. Would I be shocked if she bounced back? No. But I think I've got one for you here, lads. Just get your notebooks out. At a price. Number 2, Mistral Star. Winner place. Without blue stocking, the bar is not super high here. My mole close to the Beckett stable says they're really keen on You Got To Me, that she's thrived again since the Curragh. I did think Content was unlucky. I thought she got chopped for room for quite a substantial amount of time, and I think she might have a good chance of reversing that form. But have a look at the ratings. Emily, who knows? Queen of the Pride, 111, Sea Theme, 106, Content, 110, 107 for Larbor and 108 for Port Fairy, 111 for You Got To Me. They're not proper Group 1 ratings. Mistral Star is only 106, but she's definitely getting better. She's by Frankel out of Scirocco Star, who is a good filly who finished 4th in this. She pulled too hard, much too hard, when she was 3rd behind Queen of the Pride at Haydock. She settled better against a better pace at Newmarket, and it was only a listed race, but she bolted up. So I think she's getting good at the right time, and a 14-1 winner place. I really like her.
Oh, really interesting. Line there on the Old Show. SkyBet Lowther for the 2-year-old fillies. Leah Varney with 2-1 Fav in there. Heaven's Gate for Aidan. Jack, any strong views on the Lowther?
Well, Levarni obviously she was very impressive, wasn't she, in the Queen Mary? She beat her group over on the far side pretty handsomely. I'm not 100% sure how strong that Queen Mary was, but I mean, she was incredibly impressive. Heaven's Gate, she likes to get on with things. If she can jump out well and get a softish lead, I don't know whether she will or not, then she might take a bit of pegging back, because obviously Leovanni, she's got a penalty. she's stepping up in trip. I think Heaven's Gate potentially the more solid. I think Liavani, if any horse in here is going to be a star, it may well be her. But I think Heaven's Gate is more solid over 6 furlongs. She's kind of bred to be more of a miler, and she's got a pretty stout pedigree, so she's done well to have such solid form over 6 as a 2-year-old. So I think she's just the more solid of the two. Liavani showed a lot of speed at Ascot, so I'd probably, if it's a bit of a coin toss really, but I'd probably just fall in favour of Heaven's Gate, I think.
GC, any strong views on that, Lowther?
I think there's one horse who might be slightly under the radar here, and that's the other Carl Burke filly, Miss Lamai, who wasn't too far behind Liavani in the Queen Mary, went to Nace, won decisively, and 6 furlongs should suit. So not going overboard, but I think there's less between Liavani, who does have a £3 penalty, and a stablemate than the market suggests.
Yeah, I like Miss Lamai. I thought she was unlucky in the Mary Gate earlier in the season at this track, and obviously came out and franked that form at Nace. But yeah, Carl Burke's got a great record in this race, and often with his second string as well. So really? I'd not put a line through Miss Lamai, yeah.
Yeah, we know we've got a deep crop of juvenile fillies, but the cream don't seem to be here. Fairy Godmother, Bedtime Story, Babouche, Lake Victoria. So this is a good Group 2 opportunity for what might be the second wave of 2-year-olds.
Scoop, I know where you're going with this question. We've got one of the shortest price handicap favourites of the week in El Najm. I'm sure you don't pronounce that way either. In the Clipper, no longer the Clipper Logistics, I don't think. I think they've lost the logistics, but the Clipper, short price favourite, Ben Linfoot 4 or against.
I just know I'm going to take him on. I mean,
17
and
box.
It's that price in a race.
You got 17?
17 box.
Drawn wide, yeah. But what is he, a couple of pounds well in after Ascot? He's a difficult one to take on because he's obviously progressive. I think he could be a group horse, but it's all factored into his price, surely, in a race like this. So I'm going to go against Dave, but a little bit reluctantly because I do respect him.
It's one of those races, GC, the York Handicaps, you have to walk away thinking that they could run that race 10 times that afternoon and you'd get 10 different winners. You need an awful lot to go your way to win one of these.
Strongly disagree for this year. I think El Najm, I think he'll win. I just do. I was doing the Whirlpool show on King George Day when he won, and he won decisively, and it was a tepid pace. And I just, the moment he hit the line, I thought, if they'd have gone a good gallop there, that horse would have won by 5, pulling a bus. So I think the penalty leaves him really well handicapped. Not crazy about the draw, but Haggis doesn't toss Group 1 entries about like some trainers, and he's put him in the QE2. And I just think he's too progressive. The one I'll save on, I like Holloway Boy for obvious reasons. Thunder Run is on the upgrade. New Image will attract support, but Metal Merchant's a favourite of mine. He just keeps running well, and I think York a mile and a good gallop will suit him well. But I just think that if you're opposing El Najm here, you're opposing a horse who's definitely ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, casting vote, for or against that favourite?
I'd have to be 4. I mean, I'm not a fan of the draw. 17's tricky, but obviously he's still a couple pounds well in here. Like GC says, he's got Group 1 entries. He looked very, very exciting last time out. So he's obviously a short price, but I think you'd have to be for him. I mean, at a massive price, a horse I've always kind of had a bit of a soft spot for. He's not easy to win with, but Bo Pedro always seems to kind of run a decent race at a big price in some of these big handicaps. He's been a little bit unlucky the last twice. He is pretty tricky, and he is an 8-year-old now. But David O'Mara at this meeting, I always think his runners deserve a second look. So it wouldn't surprise me if Bo Pedro ran well at a big price, but El Najm, definitely the one to beat.
Owned by Georgino Ruta, isn't it, Bo Pedro? Might be heading to the sales himself now. After 40 million moves to Brighton, we'll have got a few more pennies in the coffer Friday. Now, it's not a vintage renewal in terms of quality of the Culmore Nunthorpe Stakes, GC, but these sprinters, they're serving a season where there's no obvious champion, but a season of compelling clashes. It's Asphora v Big Evs round 3. It's 1-1. Which way does the scoreboard go on Friday? Aussie.
Asphora, no knock on Big Evs, but she's better off at the weights this time around. She was just a tad unlucky at Goodwood, wasn't she? She just got a check at an important point as she was making headway. I think it was Living the Dream, last year's Nunthorpe winner, who checked her as he started to find the going tough. But I think it'll be potentially a heads and necks job, as you suggest. But I think Asphora has a lot of what you look for in an Nunthorpe horse. She won't lead, but she'll get a really strong pace to cruise behind. And I think it's a big week for Oisin Murphy. I think he's got loads of good rides, including in the tough handicaps. This as big as any. Hortensia, you'll remember, good Aussie mare. She won the Goodwood race prior to winning this in 2012. And I think Asphora's perhaps cut from similar cloth.
Jack, how do you see it?
Well, my head says Asphora. My heart says living the dream. That's clearly, he was brilliant last year, 28-1 shock winner. It was the story of the week, probably the story of the season. In favour of living the dream, it's not been a stellar season by any means this year. But I mean, I think the only time he's had things go in his favour were first time out at Haydock, where he broke well, but he was pestered for the lead. He was maybe a little bit short of match fitness, and he just tired late on. Then he fluffed the start second time after that. Sandown was a bit of a mess. He was caught wide on softish ground. I think it was a better run at Goodwood last time. I think but he wasn't quite away as sharply as you'd like as he was in the Nunthorpe last year. And I just think if he can absolutely ping the lids like he did in this race last year and get a slight break on the field, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw him run a big race. Obviously, Sean Curran's back on board. I'm glad to see he's back in the plate and given another chance. So my heart very much I really would love to see Living the Dream back up. But my head, as GC's made the point, Asphora is very unlucky at Goodwood. I think she's the one to beat. Not a knock on Big Evs. I think he's a solid horse, but I think she may have his measure at York.
We should mention we could be on weather watch by this point, couldn't we, lads? That we can't be sure, but the ground could be shifting by this point.
Scoop Believing's in the mix, close up in that Goodwood race, regional for Ed Bettle. There's plenty of there with their chances. That sort of Nunthorpe. What's on your shortlist?
Yeah, I didn't think Asphora was a Nunthorpe horse when she won at Royal Ascot in June. I thought she probably needed that stiff 5, but then I saw her at Goodwood and I've sort of changed my mind. I just think she might be too good, as the lads have said already. And with the weight pull with Big Evs, etc., I do think she's going to put in a really bold performance and she's the one to beat. But we know this is a unique Group 1. It's the fastest Group 1 5 furlongs around. We don't know about the ground yet. We won't go into that. But you can get race specialists win this race. We've seen it a few times, haven't we? And living the dream. I thought he ran okay at Goodwood, and if he's back in the same sort of form he was last year, he could be the one to beat the Aussie mare. But I would sort of have it between those two.
There we go. We've narrowed that down quite well. GC, the Lonsdale's got Point Lonsdale in it. Now, Kyprios, we've got Gregory, we've got Vauban back, looking to get back on track ahead of his own trip to Melbourne. Is it similar to the Nunthorpe? Is this one that could go any way?
I thought the betting was about right, to be honest, Dave. Point Lonsdale has the rating and the potential of this trip to run a really good race. Yes, he was beaten in France last time, but it was a Group 1 and he ran right up to his best. So he's uncomplicated. He's not a superstar. There's no Kyprios here. There's no Trawlerman. There's no Sweet William. We do have a 3-year-old, Align the Stars, likely to run. Double Eclipse for Mark Johnson Sr. was the last 3-year-old to win this back in 1995 with the late Tyrone Williams on board. So it's good to see him prepping for the Ledger, I think. But Point Lonsdale, Vauban, and perhaps Gregory. I thought Gregory showed that he's back on form at Goodwood last time, and without Kyprios and without Trawlerman and without Sweet William, he should run a good race too.
Let's talk Jim Crack as well. It's the 2-year-olds. Again, it's a tight betting heat, Scoop. It's Shadow of Light, the Striking Viking, Andy Seat, and Camille Pissarro. It's similar to the Lau. There's not much between them.
No, there isn't. There's quite a few in here to talk about, isn't there? I think the Striking Viking looks the obvious one after he obviously debuted at this track with such an impressive win back when he was with Kevin Ryan in June, and obviously he's taken his form forward since then at the Curragh and at Goodwood. So I think he's probably the one that got to beat. But the Godolphin called Shadow of Light as well. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. As in 2 starts is a big step up in class for him, but he looks to have all the goods to run a big race. And when I went to Calbert's earlier in the season, he was a big fan of this Andersite going into Royal Ascot. Obviously didn't didn't run there, but he's got course form at York after his win here on debut. So plenty to go through in the gimcrack, and I need to think about it a bit more, I think.
Jack, it just struck me that Charlie Appleby, I mean, it's amazing he hasn't got anything in the altitude. We thought he had 3 goals for the derby at the start of the 3-year-olds aren't, in terms of the middle distance also there, but the 2-year-olds, these are 2 big 2-year-olds, Rodin Court and the one in the gimcrack are 2 big runners for him this week.
Oh, definitely. I think last year it was quite a quiet year for him on the 2-year-old front, wasn't it? But these 2, if he's going to be back up there challenging for trainers' titles and, you know, challenging for guineas and things like that, he needs these 2-year-olds, these big expensive 2-year-olds to step up in these races. So it's fascinating to see this Shadow of Light. He looks very, very smart. So you're right, it's a big week for Charlie. Last year wasn't the greatest year in the world. He's had slightly better results this time around, but if he's going to get back up to the heights of a few years ago, he needs these kind of horses to deliver on the big days, I think. But Scoop touching it there, I know Carl Burke thinks the world of this Anders side. I can't remember why he had to miss Royal Ascot, but I'm looking forward to seeing him back as well.
Yes, fascinating heat. GC, let's move on to Saturday. There'll be loads of locals with placards. Make it a Group 1. The SkyBet City of York Stakes, still a Group 2. We've got a Group 1 winner in Audience, and he's almost box office viewing, isn't he, this season? It's fascinating to see how he goes on this time around. Meeting Kinross again, ground dependent, obviously.
I've got him so badly wrong, Audience. I really have. So I'm not going to knock him anymore. He's off my naughty step. So no, he did get a handy lead at Goodwood. The fancied horses didn't press him as hard as seemed likely, and he took full advantage. Might have Art Power keeping him company again this time. Kinross didn't have the pace to suit him last time, so it should be closer. Must admit, I've not gone into this race in any massive depth, but Audience, with that rating of 124 so far, with a big Group 1 win and a big Group 2 win, is one of the horses of the year so far, isn't he?
And Jack, Lake Forest, interesting. Gimcrack winner from last season. Lots of people think this has been his race for a little while. Are you expecting a big show from him?
Yeah, he should run a massive race, shouldn't he? I think the flat 7 around York's going to be right up his street. A couple of lovely runs so far this season. I wasn't expecting him to run quite as well as he did in the Commonwealth first time up. I thought that was a really nice run, and then good effort again at Newbury last time. So he's going to be bang there, isn't he? But like GC says, I find him Audience completely impossible. I've got no idea what he's going to do. I don't really like the horse very much. He's a bit of a quirky character, isn't he? There are just some horses you don't really warm to. He's one of them. But I mean, fair play to him. He's had a great season, and it wouldn't surprise me if he went and bolted up here. He's well clear on ratings. He's clearly improved this year. So a tricky race for me, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see Lake Forest up at 7 furlongs, definitely.
Scoop, any views on the City of York Stakes? If not, can I have your shortlist for Saturday's SkyBet Ebor at this stage?
I think Kinross is looking like he's got a bit of a regressive profile to me, and Audience needs things to pan out just nicely for him with a bit of a loose lead on the front end. So I'm with Lake Forest. I think obviously last year's Gimcrack winner, he's improved massively over 6. 7 looks like it's going to be his trip, and it really does look like the race for him to me. So I'll definitely be in the Lake Forest camp, I would think, in the City of York Stakes.
And in the SkyBet Ebor?
Well, yeah, obviously not had a great look at this race yet, but there's some obvious ones on my shortlist. I mean, Harbour Wind has got to be up there for Dermot Weld. I know he's going to have a lot of weight to give away, but it does look a class act to me, and I can see him running a big race. I've had Relentless Voyager on my shortlist for this race from a long way out, the son of Ulysses, who bolted up in handicap company at Epsom earlier in the season, and then he came to York for a little bit of an Ebor trial in June, and it was a messy, slow gallop kind of a race that didn't suit him, and he just ran on nicely for a couple of lengths defeat over the SkyBet Ebor course and distance. And I thought then, yeah, he could have a big say in the Ebor. Obviously, he's run behind Al Arsi since at Goodwood, who came out and franked the form on Saturday. So I think he's a player at a price, but those 2 would be at the top of my shortlist at the moment, Harbour Wind and Relentless Voyager.
Thank you for pretending you haven't read. There's hundreds of thousands who've read my Ebor horse by horse guide, Scoop. I mean, I think we're setting records as we speak. I've got a little hit on me.
Thank you.
And the messages just keep flooding. I will reply to you all. Thank you. Epic Poet and Shadow Dance, my 2. Not that anybody asked against the race. Shadow Dance, of course, trained by Roger variant, Jack, and the expulsion tool's been brandished. Shaker Bay has sent the horse boxers in, and the 10 horses have left the yard. I'm racing earlier in this season. He's had Charing, he's had a Guineas win, but it's not all been plain sailing for the trainer this season so far.
No, he who must be obeyed. He's struck again, hasn't he? It's interesting, like you say. Obviously, Ammo took the horses away earlier in the year, reportedly over a row about dinner arrangements. I've been led to believe. So
I've heard the same stuff.
Yeah.
Be careful which restaurant you walk in if you drop out of one seat with a message.
Yeah, I'm not really sure the reason why Shaker Bates decided to take the horses away from Roger, but 9 years, to be fair, Roger's done pretty well to last that long with an owner with as itchy a trigger finger as the Sheikh. So it's going to be a blow to him. But I mean, outside Matsuri, who a few sources have kind of said to me he's gone to George Bowie's yard, so that's yet to be confirmed.
Ooh. Awesome.
Outside of Matsuri, I don't think there was a great deal of quality in there. Boiling Point was a solid horse, so he's not losing any real superstars outside of that one horse. So it'll be a blow, but as you say, Sharon, he's got other horses. He's won the Guineas with Al Malka, so Roger will be all right.
I'm sure, like Alan Partridge behind me will bounce back. JC,
no, I've got a trick with this. I could tell, unlike me, you lot are not military men. Jacob Bates, he's a military man, and when he gives an order, that order must be obeyed. If you'd had the TA experience like me, you'd understand that. But it would be quite apt if Roger ended another, how shall we say, trying week, because he trains no retreat, snagged on the line at Windsor last night with an Ebor win. And Dave, you'll back me up 100% here. Ben, when you're doing your weekend stuff, we would never dream of pointing you in the direction of a certain race. But if we were to, it would be that Hornblower handicap at Ripon, in which Shadow Dance was just beaten by Iron Lion, who's got a big chance at York on day one. By the way, keep an eye on him in the Stayers handicap. And also keep an eye on Seeking from the same race, who was hampered at a crucial point. But as I said, we would never dream of pointing you in the direction of any particular race, but get that video out.
Noted.
Jack, what's on your radar for the SkyBet Ebor?
Well, like you, I was quite keen on Epic Poet. He obviously caught the eye a bit at Royal Ascot with that second behind Crystal Black, and also is running the John Smiths. But this is the first time I've looked at this race in a little while. I didn't realise he's now favourite, so I've gone off him a little bit. Burdett Road, I think he's going to run well. He's obviously got a bit of back class on the flat, but he's been a very smart hurdler. So I think off his current handicap mark, I think he's going to run well. I've seen Sylvester de Souza's booked. I quite like that booking as well. So I reckon Burdett Road will run a decent race in the Ebor.
Two quick questions. One, could this be the first time in living memory when the Ebor doesn't fill? Has that thought crossed your mind?
It did yesterday. I was utterly amazed at the number that came out, that you're left with 28. Is it maximum field 22?
Yeah,
I couldn't get to sleep last night, GC, thinking about it. I mean, nothing in turn.
So you make light of these things, but you've been able to get in on 95 once or twice. You'll sneak in easily with that mark this time. And secondly, a different sort of question. I wonder what Sheikh Obeid's military service actually consists of. You reckon? I'm not sure he's been seen on the front line that often. Do you?
I think he's got a uniform with loads of medals on, though.
I know.
So like some members of the royal family.
Listen, quite a few of our royals have got those.
Well, Scoop, can you try to get Sheikh Obeid on next week to discuss his military service? I'm not around, I'm on holiday, but it'd be much appreciated.
He'd be the perfect podcast guest, wouldn't he? I mean,
absolutely.
Sheikh Obeid, if you are listening to this, please come on the podcast.
On the rare occasions he's been on telly, he never tires of telling us that he actually is the Dubawi man, wouldn't he? He was the man behind it. He rams that point home very firmly indeed. But he's a military man, so what can you say?
Not to say that Kevin Ryan and Carl Burke, I don't know if it's geographical. I don't know how often he visits North Yorkshire, the Sheikh. I mean, there's military manoeuvres up there. If you're listening, Your Highness, there's lots of military bases you can inspect.
I saw one piece with him, joking apart, where he did say that he'd already saved $1 million by moving horses away from the sort of more expensive Newmarket yards to Carl Burke, etc.
That was interesting. That was a line that Kia came out with as well, wasn't it, around ammo, that if you're having horses in the big expensive Newmarket yards, they need to be absolute top notch as bringing in top money, otherwise it's pointless. So maybe the economics is taking effect nowadays, but who knows? What I do know is
what about one horse from everyone to keep an eye on at York this week?
Go on, Scoop, you can go first. You stuck your tongue out, which I didn't know if that was it was a bad sign. I thought you were eager to get chomping at the bit. You desperately think.
I was just waiting for your wrap up, Dave. Thank you.
No. Go on, Scoop.
I'll start us off with.
Go on, you start us off, Peter.
I think Iron Lion on day one has a big chance in that staying handicap. He should be a reasonable price, and I think he's up in trip, but he's got stamina in his pedigree. He's got a real finishing kick. That Ripon race come the end of the week, the Hornblower. Just say it again, Ben. Keep an eye on it.
Scoop, you?
Well, I've only done one race in depth. Yeah, that's the first on Wednesday. So I am back in Desert Cop.
I like that one as well, Ben. Well done.
Well, I just think this horse has got a big race. And obviously, he won a big race earlier in the season at Newmarket off a mark of 94. He's only £2 higher here. And last time at Ascot, he ran over 5 furlongs for the very first time. And I just thought he was lit up that day by Night on Earth, who overtook him in the first furlong. And he was just too keen under Joe Mason. But with O'Sheen back on board in a big field like this, I think he's got a big chance. So Desert Cop, first race, day one, each way.
And it's the first time O'Sheen's been back on him since that Newmarket win on Guinea's Day. So are we piling in? His
half brother, Desert Law, won this race.
Oh wow, that's
very
good information.
To criticise Joe Mason, who was such a good guest on the show last week, but
no criticism. He was unlucky. He got lit up because of that Night on Earth. It wasn't nothing to do with Joe. She couldn't do anything about it.
There you go, clarity there. Jack, you're one for the week.
Well, I must admit, Audie, I missed this part of your email, so I'm completely
well done, Jack.
I've got the Saturday race.
Maybe a story to look out for. We often get a sort of ongoing story brewing during Ebor Week. Remember when the JB Spencer retired and stuff like that? Is there something brewing on the news front?
Well, to be honest, it's been very quiet recently, but obviously there was all that furore last week with O'Sheen, wasn't it? And as you pointed out, O'Sheen's going to have a massive week. I think he's got well-fancied rides in most of the big races. So it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on next week. I mean, what was he, 30-odd clear in the jockey's title race? So I think it's a massive week for him, and it will be great to see him get some big winners on the board. I'm quite looking forward to seeing See the Fire in the Strentzel. I think Andrew Balding is very confident of a big run there. They want to get a win into her before some big Group 1 targets in the autumn. So, GC, there's always kind of storylines throughout the week at these kind of big meetings. We're just going to have to wait and see how it all unfolds.
I'll be chasing George Bowie round to stand up my exclusive about him being sent the Shaker Bates star from Varians. That's the story that the Dave Ord exclusive, as you heard on this podcast, head of the HWPA award. Thanks for asking. Mine's Scoop. Thank you for asking. Is managing director in the nursery on the day. The Bonds, who spent a fortune, expensive breeds up by, had 3 runs, finished 3rd at Beverley 2 starts ago behind Uncle Don of Richard Fahey's, who I know he thinks an awful lot of. Big Mojo was 2nd on debut there. Was nicely clear of the 3rd. Ran behind another one of Richard's at Ayr next time. Going back up to 6 furlongs, got his mark. Sylvester de Souza booked. Managing director in the nursery on day one for me. Again, Scoop, thank you for asking me. After Jack had finished, that was much appreciated. Brilliant. Time has beaten us. They have our thoughts ahead of the SkyBet Ebor Festival, and best of luck with your own bets of what should be 4 fantastic days.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.